In other news, the Social Welfare Department rescues over 160 children who had been abused at a daycare center in Mexico, Pampanga. Gracie Rutao on the line now with details. Gracie, what more can you tell us?
Carmina, the DSWD has rescued around 160 children from a care facility in Mexico, Pampanga after reports of severe abuse. Children were allegedly chained, locked in bathrooms, forced to kneel on salt or gravel, eaten, and fed spoiled food. A cease and desist order was issued as the facility was found.
Gracie? Gracie?
Yes, a cease and desist order was issued as the facility was found to be fire hazard and had no license or expectations and suffered from flood mismanagement. The children are now in DSWD custody, receiving medical and psychological care. Pampanga's provincial government sent pediatricians to assess their condition. Some were found to be malnourished or bruised, according to Dr. Dax Tibula. Governor Lilia Pineda also said that the children's recovery will be fully supported by the government. The DSWD is pursuing legal actions against the facility's American lead pastor and is studying additional kidnapping charges. Carmina?
Thanks a lot. Gracie Rutao there joining us on the line. Social Welfare Secretary Rex Gatchalian now joins us here in the program. Secretary Gatchalian, good afternoon to you and thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the program.
Carmina, good afternoon to your televiewers. Thank you for having me as well.
I wish we could have been talking now under better circumstances, but here we are, more than 160 kids rescued by the DSWD. How are the children doing, Secretary?
Well, Carmina, first of all, I managed to visit, I actually visited them yesterday and managed to speak to around 4 or 5 of them. The ones I spoke to were clearly distraught. They were talking about their harrowing experience inside that private care facility, what they underwent in the past couple of months. But suffice to say, though, they're in our hands now. Our social workers are with the kids. Our psychometricians are actually doing the trauma and post-stress debriefings. We'll make sure that they get to difficult times together with our social workers.
Secretary, how did they end up there to begin with?
Carmina, you have to remember, this is a licensed and registered social welfare and development agency. We have a lot of these running all throughout the country. They're regulated by DSWD, and I want to point out that regular monitoring is conducted by the department. Since their registration in 2018, there were no telltale signs of such. They actually got the renewal in 2022. But recently, when we did because we do our quarterly monitoring round the clock. If you can recall, when I joined the department in 2023, one of the things that I stumbled on were agencies like this that weren't following the standard.
Correct.
It was the case of Gentle Hands that we shut down as well.
Correct.
After that, we tightened the monitoring mechanism by making sure that our field offices visit foundations like this on a quarterly basis. So we got word of this because our staffers were there last August in 10. They were doing the regular monitoring. And at that time, this time around, what caught us as peculiar was that were the kids trying to talk to the staff of DSWD directly. They wanted to call attention to themselves. Unlike the prior visits, there were none. So our staff immediately took action, came back with social workers, interviewed the children, and that's where we found the whole stories that they went through. But again, this agency has a registration, has a license to operate, and we were doing our regular monitoring since the time they got their license to operate. And it's only recently that we found such stories coming out of the kids themselves.
All right, 2 questions from there, Secretary. Were these the same staffers that would regularly conduct the visits? And number 2, is this the same batch of kids that they would see in every visit?
Say it again, Carmina. The question I heard, but I didn't hear the second question.
Okay. Same batch of staffers, that's the first question. And also
Yes.
same batch of kids?
Yes. The first question, yes. It's our field office in Central Luzon that would conduct the regular monitoring. It's a quarterly check, so to speak. So it's the same staff, and it's also the same kids. Prior visits, we didn't see anything. The kids were not saying anything wrong. And now they did. So we took action immediately.
What do we know about the pastor, Secretary?
Well, the pastor is married to a Filipina local, Filipina. He's been operating this foundation since 2018, as I mentioned. There are religious services conducted at the premise as well, because I believe it's a Baptist church on top of the care facility. Other than that, we don't have any other derogatory record on this pastor himself, except this particular case. But let me just point out that whenever we hear of such case, whether it's new, it's isolated, we take it seriously. That's why in August 10, when our staff went there to do the regular standards check, and the kids wanted to talk to her, she immediately acceded to it, and then she came back together with social workers August 12. And that's where we dug more of the stories and we went deeper into the allegations of the children.
So you have a licensed agency, correct? And you did rescue these kids, and you heard them firsthand. As you said in the beginning of this conversation, they were clearly distraught. Secretary, do you have reason to doubt what the children have told you?
Carmina, I'll just be very forthright and honest with you. There were 160 kids, and my first instinct was to talk to the bigger bunch, which was housed in one of our facilities. At that instance, they were telling that this set of kids were saying, no, the stories are not true. No, the kids who are complaining were, quote-unquote, pasaway sila. They were a regular rules breaker. But after that, I spoke to the 5 of the 8 kids who reported abuse. And 5 of them were narrating in great detail the stories the maltreatment stories. And based on our social workers and psychologists account, there is no reason to doubt the 8 kids. And whether 1, 2, or 3, the mere fact that a child got hurt or was maltreated, that's enough for us to take severe actions strong actions against this agency, the SEB agency.
Secretary, are you looking at just one perpetrator here? Secretary, I'm sorry, but your audio is coming in choppy.
Yes, now I can hear you.
There, that's better. So again, the question: are you looking at just one perpetrator here within the agency?
No, I don't want to be telegraphing our process, but suffice to say that we're digging deeper, and there's a name that keeps on cropping up. One of the staffers' name keeps on cropping up from the 8 kids who have registered or narrated harrowing stories. So we're looking into more characters and more suspects, and appropriate cases will be filed accordingly.
And so after the kids get the appropriate care that they need, Secretary, what's going to happen next to them?
Carmina, I want to point out one more thing. So we took the files back, and we noticed, well, of course, we're validating it again. We noticed that some of the kids are already due for reintegration back to their families. Meaning, in their own case files, we saw positive parent capacity reports, assessment reports. We call that the PICAR. And those PICARs are saying that some of the kids' families are ready to receive them again because they've undergone the necessary capacity building exercises.
Okay.
So the first order of business is to reintegrate those, the kids that can be reintegrated back to their families, we reintegrate them back. Second, those that are not yet ready, whose families are not ready to receive them and needs further rehabilitation and further reintegration capacity exercises, we will be doing it in our own care facilities. We're in the process already of identifying where else we can move the children. Remember, we have around 76 DSW care facilities, so we can move them in the age-appropriate care facilities because the age bracket of the kids range from 7 months to 7 years old. And there are distinct interventions that needs to be done for each age bracket. So we're going to move them to the age-appropriate care facilities of DSWD for proper intervention with the hopes that we can bring them back to their families.
Secretary, what does one get if it's a licensed agency? Does it get anything from the DSWD? What does an agency get from the DSWD?
They don't get anything from us. What they do get, though, is, from my understanding, they have their own donor base, and it's from the donors that they draw their funds from. Similar to the case of Gentle Hands, that was the modus operandi, so to speak. They were running these agencies, and they were fundraising, quote-unquote, off the kids to show that they were doing benevolent things. They don't get anything from DSWD. We're their regulator more than their donor.
All right. But if they have, X number of kids under their care, the lesser the kids are, the lesser the funding, I suppose. So do you believe as well that there's sort of an angle here because as you said it yourself, there are some who are already ready for reintegration, yet they're still there. Is there a money-making scheme angle that you're looking at here as well, Secretary?
Carmina, I don't want to speak and preempt the ongoing investigation for this case in particular, but from my experience in the Gentle Hands case, that was the case. They were running over their capacity because they're fundraising off the number of kids that they had. Second, they were also looking for more donors in the process. They were showing that they were doing so much more and they're swamped with kids and that they need more funding. That what I saw in the Gentle Hands, and that was very clear, and that was their modus operandi. And for this case, there are telltale signs that they were doing the same thing. But again, the investigation is ongoing, so I'd rather leave it at that, rather than preempting the fact-finding that's already happening right now, both by the prosecutors and at the same time by our own social workers.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it at that. Social Welfare Secretary Rex Gatchalian joining us this noon. Thanks again, Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you again, Carmina. Good afternoon.